everyone, welcome to the Jayda and Stitches show. During a live stream a little while ago, I started work on a baby blanket, and at the time I said I was going to come up with some kind of a simple, sweet little border that would work on a large granny rectangle baby blanket or even a large granny square baby blanket. And by large, I just mean it's one continuous rectangle or one continuous square. So it's not a bunch of little modular bits all sewn together. It's just continually adding rows to make the blanket any size you want. And I've done that. Today's tutorial is just for the border, and we have other tutorials for making granny rectangles or granny squares. We'll link them down below and in the pinned comment for ease of clicking. Now, I've made a 28 row granny rectangle. So that's 28 shells across the top and the bottom and 30 across either side. But this border works no matter how many rows your granny rectangle is or how many rows your granny square is. So if you've only got a 4-row granny square because you're making something insy-binsy for a little tiny doll, this border will work on that. And if you've made it extra large for a larger baby, like a toddler, maybe you've made it 60 rows. This border will work on that too. Now, it's a very delicate little border. I think it's cute for either boys or girls, and I feel like it works nicely on a smaller blanket. So I wouldn't necessarily put this on an adult blanket or a throw size blanket. But you know what? I'll let you be the judge of that. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, grab our blankets. We'll head on over to the craft table, and we will add a sweet little border to a granny square or a granny rectangle baby blanket together. I'll be demonstrating today's baby blanket border using a size 3 baby weight or sport weight or lightweight yarn acrylic. So it has a few different names. It's also known as a DK weight in the UK, but it's a lighter weight yarn, nice for a baby, and I'm using a granny rectangle square. My granny rectangle is 28 rows in total, and I've used about 400 yards. If you're making a larger granny square or granny rectangle, you may need more yarn, and if you're making a smaller one, you're going to need less yarn. I'm using a 4.5 millimeter hook. This is also known as a size 7, but you can use whatever hook is comfortable for you or that suits your stitch tension or the yarn you're using. We've got a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and you might find some clips or stitch markers are quite handy for this because we want to mark out the corner stitches at the end of row 1 of our border. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. I've completed 28 rows now in my granny rectangle blanket, but as I said before, you can make a granny rectangle or a granny square of any number of rows you want. I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began the row, but instead of slip stitching across to the corner like I typically do with my granny rectangles or my granny squares, I'm going to start right where I am for the border. For row 1 of the border, we're going to chain 1. We're going to single crochet in the same place that we joined, and we're going to single crochet in every single stitch and space all the way around. So let's single crochet into each of those next 2 stitches, and that'll bring us up to the chain 2 corner. You have 4 chain 2 corners. Into each corner you're going to single crochet 3 times. So 3 single crochet in each corner space, and before you leave I recommend that you take a stitch marker or a clip and just mark that middle stitch. So I'm just going to pinch the top of that middle stitch. 1, 2, 3, I'm pinching the top of it, and if that's too difficult to see, I'll just pinch that back loop. There, you can see that's the middle stitch I've marked. That way I can clearly see where that middle corner stitch is when I get back to it on row 2. So I recommend you do that in every corner, and then just continue single crocheting in each stitch. And remember, there's 3 double crochet per shell, so there's 3 single crochet per shell, and a single crochet in each chain 1 space. Nice and easy, take your time. When you get to a corner, it's 3 single crochet and mark the middle stitch with a stitch marker, just so it's easier to see when we get it back around to it. At the end of the row of single crochet, the last single crochet is worked into that space, and we're just going to join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet we made in the row. Now this is our basic foundation row for the border. So if you were going to add this border to other blankets, just know that this border will work over top of any foundation border row that is any multiple of 2 plus 1 plus the little corner stitch. So you're going to have 4 individual corner stitches, and the rest of the sides can be any multiple of 2 plus 1 extra stitch. And that's why I say you can make your little granny rectangle or granny square blankets any number of rows, because this little pattern remains the same no matter how many shells are there. That is the end of row 1. Let's start with the fun stuff. This is row 2. We're going to chain 1 and stay where we are. We're going to single crochet into the same stitch that we joined in. Get our hook in there. There we go. Now we're going to chain 2, skip a stitch, find the next stitch, and single crochet into it. Chain 2, skip a stitch, and that brings us up to the marked corner stitch. And this is why I said you might find marking your corner stitches handy, because we do one special little thing in that marked corner stitch. We're going to single crochet into it, chain 2, and single crochet back into the same place. So in those marked corner stitches, you're going to single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet all into the same place. To continue, chain 2, skip a stitch, find the next stitch, and single crochet into it. And that's all we're doing all the way around. Chain 2, skip 1 stitch, find the next one, single crochet into it, chain 2, skip a stitch, find the next one, single crochet into it, and so on all the way around. The only thing you do that's a little out of the ordinary is when you get to a marked corner stitch, like this guy, you single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet into the same stitch before you chain 2, skip 1, and continue with the pattern. And that is all you need to do for row 2. I will catch up with you back at the beginning. Once you've repeated that little pattern all the way around of single crochet, chain 2, skip 1, repeat, and then in the corners you're working single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the same stitch, and then chain 2 to leave the corner. You're back at the beginning, chain your last 2, and join with a slip stitch to the top of that single crochet that began the whole row. That is the end of border row 2. Even that is a cute, soft, nice little border edge to give a blanket. So if you wanted to stop here because you were running out of yarn, you could certainly do that. But we've got one more row to go, and that's how we're going to add our little petals. From where we are, we're going to slip stitch into the next chain 2 space. So we're going to start in the chain 2 space. Every single chain 2 space is treated the same way, whether it's along a side or in a corner. So now you can really slip your brain off. And here we go. We chain 3 to begin, double crochet into the same space, find the next chain 2 space and slip stitch into it. Chain 3, double crochet into the same space, find the next chain 2 space, and in this case it's a corner, but that doesn't matter, and slip stitch into it. And that is how we make these adorable little petals. They're just the simplest, smallest little thing that runs along the edge of our blanket. Chain 3, double crochet into the same space. The little corner spaces might be a little pinched. So chain 3, double crochet, and then find the next chain 2 space, here it is here, and slip stitch. So nothing special with the corners. everything is a chain 2 space all the way around our blanket. You chain 3, double crochet in the same space, and then slip stitch into the next space. And that creates your little petal border, and I just love this little rounded edge that we get. It is so cute. Chain 3, double crochet, slip stitch into the next stitch, and that, or I should say the next chain 2 space. So we're just worrying about the spaces, and all we're going to do is that all the way around. So that's row 3, nice and simple. I'll let you work away at that, and I'll catch up with you back at the beginning. Once you've finished the last chain 3 double crochet in the last chain 2 space, you're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space where you began the row in. So right into the base of that first little petal, and that is it. You can snip your yarn, fasten off, and weave in your tail. Even the little corners are rounded. I just love how this turned out. It is the gentlest, tiniest little petal pattern, and it takes up very little yarn. So if you're getting close to the end of your granny square or granny rectangle blanket and you're about to play a little bit of yarn chicken, then this little border is a nice way to finish things off, and it's not going to use up a whole lot of yarn. I always recommend washing gently a baby blanket and allowing it to fully dry in a nice blocked format. So if you have to, you can lay it flat on some towels, just pin it into position and let it dry flat so that it looks its best. And this is especially helpful when you're working with granny squares or granny rectangles because they have lines. All of the rows kind of create a little line, and if you block them so that they all look nice and rectangular or nice and square, then it just helps give the overall blanket a really nice finished look. And blocking also helps lay things flat. So if you find that your little petals border wants to curl up a little bit, then a little bit of blocking, let it pat down to dry and it'll lay flat. You can also steam block it if you want to. Remember, don't touch your iron or your steamer to your yarn because you'll just flatten it. So don't do that. But remember, with use and with cuddling, these blankets always loosen up a little bit. They get a little bit bigger. I'd say the final size of this particular blanket is closing in on 30 by 32 inches. So that's a really nice size for a baby blanket. We hope you enjoyed working this little border along with us today on either your granny square blanket or your granny rectangle blanket. And we will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a great week. Bye, guys!
Hi, everybody. Mr. and Stitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.